Beginning our Daf Masechtes Bava Kama Daf Nun Gimel. Begin on the bottom line of Nun Beis Mabeis, where the Gemara continues explaining the halacha of our previous Mishnah, which we're in the middle of discussing the Mazag Bar. We discussed Shar obviously for many Dafim, and then we segued into Bar. So in the halacha of Bar, there's halacha, a unique halacha, which can be a machlekes amiram, regarding how the animal falls into the pit is actually going to be critical in regards to how you decide if the owner of the pit is going to be chayiv or not. Join today's daf should be throughout the entire world. So, we're discussing today's daf are the halacha of nafal lefanav. If the animal falls forward, mikoil hakriya. So some guy's digging working on that manhole, and he's making noise with his jackhammer, and the animal falls inside. So chayiv, then the owner of the pit's going to be liable. La'achrav, the animal falls backwards, mikol kriya, from the sound of the digging, which is not really so relevant. But potter, then the owner of the pit is going to be exempt. The Gemara brings a machlekes Rabbi Shmuel whether la'achrav refers to inside the bar or outside the bar. The Gemara brings and explains actually that the halacha of our Mishnah is like Reb Nosson, that Bala bar hazeka ka'avid. What that means to say is that even if, let's say, you have an ox pushing one ox into the pit, and really it's the ox that's really doing all the damage, but the owner of the ox, that the victim could tell the owner of the pit, I'm finding my ox inside of your pit, and therefore you're going to have to be responsible to hold the bag and compensate me for whatever remaining damages I have. Which then the Gemara goes into a case of shar b'shar b'sulam mikdashin shenalku. What's the halacha regarding the partnership? If, let's say, a regular ox and an ox that was from a korban that became invalid, that was redeemed, and then they gored, which if you can't collect from the shar b'sulam mikdashin, how much do you collect from the regular shar shenalku? And also, then another case, which is another variable, shar va'adam shadachfu labar. An ox and a person push another ox into a pit. So you have three mazik in here. You have shur and adam and bar. How do you allocate the liabilities of the payments? The Gemara is going to explain all the different parameters of that. So beginning our daf, the bottom line of Nun Beis Mabeis, we had said in the Mishnah that nafal lefanav v'chulu, if an ox falls forward into a pit because we're startled by the sound of digging inside, so the Baal Bar is liable to pay. La'achar mekala kriya pater. The ox fell backward from the sound. The Baal Bar is not liable to pay. That's what the Mishnah had said. The interesting halacha, and it's open to a machlekes amiram. Says the Gemara, Amarav, lefanav. When we said that if the ox falls forward, then the owner of the pit is going to be chayiv. It means lefanav mamish. It means literally it fell on its face, alapanim, and it died from the hevel. This is a machlekes Rabbi Shmuel we've quoted before. From the foul ear, it kills the animal. La'achrav. This we say when the fall is backwards. It means achrav mamish. It means literally it fell backwards on its back of its head. And as the Gemara continues on the Gimel Madalf, and both are falling into the pit. And even so, the Mishnah is coming to tell us that if it fell backwards, the owner of the pit is going to be potter because it didn't die from the hevel, because the ear wasn't going into its lungs and killing it. Rather, it's from the bang. It fell on its head and the back. Now, that's karka olam. That's just public property from the street that damaged him. That's not my ground. And therefore, Rav's opinion, as the Gemara says, Rav l'tamei, Rav goes according to his reasoning. Rav says, the pit, and we brought this on Daf Nun Daled, on the next Daf, that the bar that the Torah holds you liable for is lahavloi v'loi l'chabatoi, is for the ear and not for the bang, because that's not your ground. You're not going to be liable for what the public property is making you damage. It's the ear space that you created. That foul ear was your creation, and therefore it's going to be only if hevel. When it falls forward, this hevel falls backwards, even in the pit, even though it bangs up in the ground of your pit, that's not what you're liable for, and if you're going to be pot. That's the opinion of Rav. Ushmol Amar, he says, no. If it's bebar, if it falls in the pit, whether it fell forward, backwards, I don't care, you're going to be liable because Shmuel tamei. Shmuel goes according to his reasoning. Dama that he says lahavloi, this that you're chayiv for is for the foul air, but for sure the bang, because you're the one who created the chevet of the bottom, and therefore that's something that you're liable for. So then how do you understand the halacha of the Mishnah? So what does it mean, la'achar mikol akri the potter? So why, when you would fall backwards from the sound of the guy who's digging, would you be potter? Well, from what reason? Oh, it's kagoin de nitkel babar. We're talking about where the ox tripped on the pit. It fell behind the pit, out of the pit. Well, that's not something, that ground is not yours. That's not something that the ox stumbled over the pit. So there the balabar is going to be pit because the pit did not directly cause the hazard. Yeah, it's a grama, but you're not chayiv for grama of your pit. And therefore, that's the case that the Mishnah is talking about. La'achra, potter means outside, it fell back outside the pit. So there's no hevel, there's no chevet, even though it's getting chevet, but not your chevet, not your bank from the bottom of your pit. That's the case that the Mishnah is saying you're going to be potter. Now, the Gemara says, the Gemara asks on Rav from the following brisa. The brisa seems to be explicitly not like Rav. It says, Bebar, when the animal falls in the pit, bein lafon of bein la'achar of chayiv. Whether in front, meaning face forward, or backwards, you're going to be chayiv. Well, you have to do Rav. That's like Shmuel, who says that in the pit, you're always going to be chayiv. Rav says that, no, if you fall backwards in the pit, you're going to be potter because there's no hevel. Similarly, it's not like Rav. So Rav Chizr says, no, Moed Rav agrees, Bebar b'shusoy the chayiv. When it's in your private property, then you're going to be chayiv. Meaning the case of Bar b'shusay, which we say like you mafka the rishus around it, but you still own the pit, so you can't say turcha b'shasi, my boy. You can't say what's your ox doing here. What do you mean? You made the property ownless. Then you're going to be chayiv, even if you fall backwards. Why? Because the victim could tell the owner of the pit, what is it that you want? Meaning, either way, you should be chayiv. If the animal died because face forward from the hevel, this is your hevel. And if it died with the bang, it's your bang because this is your property, it is your ground. And therefore, that's the case where the Bryce is talking about that you can be chayiv bibor, even la'achrav, is bar b'shusay. Rab was talking about bar b'shusay rab, where it's not my ground, it's karka oilam, that's where you're going to be part if you fall backwards. That's one approach. Rabba Amma, he says, no, hochma iskinan. What are we talking about over here that we said that if it falls backwards, you're going to be chayiv, which that's difficult on Rav, because Rav holds you're only going to be chayiv for hevel. When you fall backwards, there's no ear flying into the face of the animal. So why would you be chayiv if you're falling backwards, according to Rav? It's been mishapich. Where this ox is doing somersaults. It flipped over. The nafala ape, it originally fell face forward. But before it hit the ground, this hapich, the nafala gabe, it flipped over, and it fell on its back. Now you try to do those flips when you're going swimming, and you go and you flap on your back, right? You try to do going forward, and you're trying to do a dive. Here he's doing a nose dive, and he flips over. Oh, the havla, that ear that came in the beginning of the fall, the hanibe that was effective to kill him, a hanibe is effectively killing him. So even though he's falling la'achrav, but it's not like it was always la'achrav. He fell, the ox falling face forward, and then he flips over at the last second. The weight is disproportionate on this ox. He's a pear-shaped ox or whatever it is, and he flips over and he hits on his back. That's going to be still lahavla, and therefore that's not difficult on Rav. A third approach of Yisrael, he says, hachol behir beniski boid b'shur askinan. So it's actually a very different interpretation. This that we said that if the ox falls into a pit, whether face forward or backwards, it's going to be chayiv. Who is going to be chayiv? We were reading all along, the simple translation is that the owner of the pit is going to be chayiv for what's happening to the shur. No, that's not the case. It's actually the exact opposite. The ox came into the courtyard of the homeowner without permission. And the homeowner did not declare ownerless, not his property, not his pit. No one has any permission to trespass, come onto his property. And then the ox falls into the pit. So my niyu, what's the case talking about? Shehivish is meimav. The ox ruined the water of the owner's pit. Oh, that's the lishno lefun of a lishno la'achrav. That doesn't make a difference if the ox fell in forward or he fell in backwards. Mechayev, the owner of the ox, is going to be responsible for the damages of the pit, not the pit of the ox. That it doesn't make a difference if he fell in forward or fell in backwards. So a totally different interpretation. Therefore, has no relevancy to the case of Rav to ask on Rav. Now the Gemara actually says that Tani Rav Chananya l'suyul Rav. So actually, they brought a brisa that seems to support Rav. Why? Because the brisa says the nafal. What does it say in the pasuk? It says that v'nafal shama chamar, ox is going to fall in. What is falling in? Achibo derech nefila. Generally, when you fall in, you fall face forward, because most animals that when they're falling into a pit, they're falling in. That's how their head is downwards. That's how they're going to fall in. Number from that's where here says the Bryce. The Mishnah told us that no, full of kriya, if it falls forward from the sound of the digging, chayv, the only pit's going to be liable. But if it falls backwards from the sound of the digging, they're both in the pit, not like Shmuel, who said that al is only achayri abar, meaning a chutz labar. But in the pit, Shmuel says you can be chayv because you have the bang. Obviously, you see the Bryce that says like Rav. Now the Gemara explains once we brought this Bryce to explain the Bryce. Amamar. We said in the Mishnah, I actually explained explaining the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, "Nafal lefana mekala kriya chayv." He said, if the animal falls face forward from the sound of the digging, so the owner of the pit's going to be chayv. Says Gemara, "Vamai, why nema koira gorimle? Why don't you say that it was the digger, the guy, the construction guy, the digging what caused?" And as Rashi explains, the guy who's digging is potter because he's what's called a grama ba'alma. He's just an indirect cause. Now, Rashi also points out it must be that the guy who's digging is not the owner of the pit, he's just a hired laborer. And for example, let's say the pit was already dug from beforehand. Because if this digger would be the one who's digging, so then of course the one who's digging would be chayv, because there's no shlichut va'avera, obviously not allowed to ruin the street, and whoever does the digging would be chayv. So we're talking about this pit was already dug a long time ago, which you have owner of a pit. Now I have a new guy who's doing some digging over there, working some construction work or doing work over there. So the Gemara's question is, why are you saying that the owner of the pit's going to be liable? Wait a second, what caused the animal to fall in? Was the startling of the digger. So he's the one who caused it, and he's potter because he's a grandma. So why is the owner of the pit going to be chayv? So this is a very important answer the Gemara gives right now, because a lot of our Gemara is going to be following along the theme of this Tana. Amar Rav Shimon bar Ashi says, "Homani, who's the Tana of our Mishnah? You're right; it's not according to everyone. Really, the owner of the pit should be potter. He didn't do it. Because the guy was digging, and the guy was digging was a grandma. Our Mishnah is Reb Nassan. Our Mishnah is Reb Nassan. What does Reb Nassan say? Lamay says, Balabar, the owner of the pit, has covered. He did the damage. In other words, which Rashi explains, meaning the victim was found in your pit. And therefore, wherever we cannot collect from the guy who really did cause the damage, the digger, but just causing sounds is an indirect causation which we cannot hold him liable. So since we cannot collect from him, mishtali mehai, then we're going to collect from you, the owner of the pit, because that's where we found our dead animal. As the Gemara brings the time, like we learned in the Brisa, shar shadachav es chaveru labar, an ox that pushed another ox into a pit. Now the Tana Kama says very simply, which he's not the Tana of our Mishnah, but he's the more obvious opinion. Well, balashar chayiv, the owner ox is chayiv because he pushed the ox in. Balabar prater, the owner pit is going to be exempt, and that's whether the ox that was a victim was a mentally deranged ox, whether it was a totally sane ox, meaning because the owner of the pit could tell him, if not for your ox pushing in this ox, he would never have fell in. And this pushing was an active damage and not just a cause. That was the pushing of the ox. So according to Tana Kama, the Balabar is totally potter. He didn't do anything. I mean, obviously, it got injured on, but my table didn't do anything. When you smashed someone into the table, not my table should be chayiv for a mazik. Someone pushed him in, so the ox pushed it in, so it can be potter. But again, that's not like our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is like the next opinion. Reb Nassan, he says, Bala shor mishal mechza. No, the owner of the ox pays half. Bala bar mishal mechza, and the owner of the pit, he pays half. Why? Because it was between the two of them that they killed this ox. And even if what's interesting, as we'll see in a moment to clarify, and on the next daf also, even if the victim ox was a pikeach. Now, we'll see something interesting on the next daf, and that usually a shor pikeach, which doesn't sound like you would know that just learning these parakim, you're actually potter if a shor pikeach falls into a pit. Why? Because the Gemara is going to tell us, you could say that the owner of the ox, Your ox should have looked where it's going, and not fall in. What? Right. So yeah, you probably could do some type of behavioral experiment or something on to see, does it take the bone? Does it take, what does it take? Like Para did with Moshe.
That case.
No. When a regular shipikech falls in, we'll see later on, is you're actually pater. Because what's called ibayilach iyune mezel. You should have looked where you're going. So the owner of the pit's actually pater. Now, here, even if the shar hanizik is a pikech, the owner of the pit is going to be chayiv. Why? Because Rashi explains, you can't say ibayilach iyune mezel because someone else pushed him in. So the victim can't be blamed. It's a little bit of a complex point, but usually the victim is going to be blamed because you should have looked where you're going. Here, the victim you can't tell that the victim, what was it to me? The victim ox, I got pushed in by another ox.
Today's society, you can blame the victim.
Right. Or don't go so close to the tracks. You don't want to get pushed in. But the point is that Al Kapanim, Reb Nassan saying a chiddush. Reb Nassan saying, even though the owner of the pit didn't do anything, and that's why the Tana Kama says he's going to be pater, no says no, not true, because your pit did the other half of the victim was found in your pit and ultimately caused the damage. Rashi is just saying added chiddush, which is very important, but that even though normally you would be pater on the shar hanizik that's a pikeach, you're going to be chayiv over here because usually you could tell the victim to say, you should have looked where you're going. Here you can't say that an ox pushed them in. But what does the ox pushing in have to do with me, the owner of the pit? Nos knows, yeah, because you are part and party of this ultimately damaging of this ox, the victim.
So you don't have to tour your shar should have really
Yeah.
The guy that pit should be chayiv always. If he has a patur, your shar should have looked.
Right.
You don't have that patur.
Exactly.
Why is it a patur? You're a groomer. At least a groomer.
Who's a grumma?
Balabar.
It sounds like it's not even a grumma. It sounds like it's
At one point he's a groomer.
how's he a grumma even?
If
By being
falls in here,
you're saying by a bar, by being a bar.
Yeah,
I don't know, is that called a grumma?
why
It's a good
can't
question.
why is he always? Because somebody. You're a groomer,
No,
you're a
so that's
groomer.
what he's saying. He's calling it a pater because you should have looked where you're going. So I'm not.
It's a mazik. A bar is a-
He's always man.
He has a patur from the Torah.
Why
So we don't have it.
Why is it patur? Because you should have looked. The ox should have looked. In other words, you're telling me that I'm going to be chayiv because I caused the damage. I didn't cause the damage. You caused the damage. You didn't look where you're going. You could say my car is parked on the side. You got banged. You got injured. You were on your electric scooter. You smashed into my car. So that's it. I'm chayiv because I was mazik you. I was a bar b'shus rabim. I'm bar b'shus rabim. Watch where you're going.
Got to be some accountability on you.
I'm saying, but if the parked car, if you have a car parked and it's someone, you're a bar.
Huh?
You're a bar b'shus rabim with your car parked on the side. You have an electric scooter. He smashed into you. He wants to sue you. Saying the Gemara makes sound like Yibaylech Yune Mazel is not. You should have looked where you're going. Like, I'm not, we all go in Rosh Hashanah. You're walking, some guy goes flying into you. You know what I'm saying? We say that the second guy, we follow standards of like protocol of how people normally walk, like we had in Perek HaManech. I'm saying like, so here also, because I have a bar, that's not my liability. But if someone we can't expect the victim to have known at nighttime or a shaita or whatever, cheresh. So again, that's just a finer point in this Gemara. But Akabanim Reb Nassan is very important because he's the Tana of our Mishnah that says that if you fall into the pit, really the one who caused it was the guy who's digging. But he's a grama, so he's potter. Fine, he's not going to pay his part. We're going to collect from you then. Why from me? What did I do? My part didn't cause anything. Yeah, but Reb Nassan holds the pit owner liable too because. Tais explains whatever, as we'll see in a moment, that because that's where the end of the hezek happened. So you're also liable. And normally you'll get off the hook because you'll say, well, you should have looked. But yeah, I couldn't have looked. I was thrown by another ox. Yeah, but I didn't do the ox. The ox did it. What do you want from me? Yeah, but now you don't have that excuse anymore. And you lie, so you are a mazik. Now, says the Gemara, but there's a contradiction actually in Rav Noson's opinion. Because we just brought a brayso that says, okay, the ox will pay half and the pit will pay half. But by the time you learn the brayso, it actually says not like that. It says Rav Noson says, Bala bar misham gimel chalakim. The owner pit's going to pay 3/4, Bala b'shar revia, and the owner pit's going to pay, and the ox is going to pay 1/4. So is it half and half or 1/4, 3/4? It's like more like kasha. Habatam, it gets very finer points over here. Like kasha habatam. When the ox is a shar tam, which it always only pays chatzi nezek, so here it's going to split its chatzi nezek with the owner of the pit. So he's only going to pay 1/4, as Gemara is going to explain. But habamuid, but when it's a shar hamuid, which it pays nezek shalom, now it's going to split its nezek shalom with the owner of the pit, so it's going to be 50-50, which each one, either way you look at it, is going to pay half the damages, which, as Rashi explains, the Gemara is going to get into an idea of, did they both do all the damage? And that is, through either one of them itself, the animal would have died. Now that they both did it, they both pay half. Or even if you say each one did half the damage, okay, whatever you did, you pay, because it's a mu'ud. That's the whole question, is did it do all the damage, or did it do half the damage? But it did all with another mazik. But either way, that's the Gemara's answer. So the Gemara says, wait, how do you understand by the mazik of tam? What's the question? So the Gemara explains this point that Rashi just brought up. And that it's iksavar, if you hold high kuli azeka ovid, high kuli azeka ovid, each one of them, the shur and the bar, they did the whole damage. That is, even without the pit, the ox that was pushed by the ox would have died. So it's as if the ox totally killed the ox. And so too regarding the pit. Since without the pushing of the ox, if the animal would have just fell in, it would have died. So it's like the pit totally killed the ox. So therefore you're being stringent and you're saying that the owner of the pit has to pay 3/4. But says the Gemara, I don't understand. Hi mishalim palga, b'hai mishalim palga. Why are you saying that it's 1/4 and 3/4? Since the owner of the ox also did all the damage, okay, shar tam pays half the damage that it did. They both did all of the damage. So you're chai for all, and even though you're tam, you'll pay half of the damage, but you did the whole damage. So pay your half and you pay your half. Why is it 1/4, 3/4? If you all did all the damages. Now, v'ika savar, and if the Tana holds, since they both did it together. No, it's not like each one did the whole thing. Because the Maisa didn't do the whole thing. I did it together with another Masik. So high palga hezega of it, high palga hezega of it. This one did have it, this one did have. And that's why he's saying the ox pays 1/4. Because it's a tam. And only half of what it did is a chayav for, because it only did half. So a tam that's normally chayav chatzi nezik should only be chayav for half of the chatzi nezik, which is 1/4 of the damages. So now it makes sense why the owner of the ox paying only 1/4. Yeah, but then I'd have a different question. The Baal Abar, who is always a mu'id, Mishalam Palga, should only pay half. Ubal Asher, and the owner of the ox, which at the time should pay, Revia should pay 1/4, V'idach Riva Mafsid, and the other 1/4 should be lost. Why you tell me the owner of the pet has to pay 3/4? Why are you paying 3/4? I thought you only did half the damages. So that's only Chatzi Nezik. What are you giving me another 1/4 of the damages for? And if we did the whole thing, and that's why the Baal Abar is paying 3/4, because I would really be liable for all, well, then the shar should pay for half, because he also did all of the damages, and then he's chayav for all of it. As a tam, he'll only pay half. Why is he paying only 1/4? So manam, either way, it doesn't make sense if you say they did all the damages or half the damages. So on that, Rabbi says Reb Nosson Dayanahu. Reb Nosson was a judge. He was Av Bezna, as the Gemara says in Harius at the end. And he came down to the depth of this judgment. And he explains like this. Lailam Kisavar, the truth he holds, Haikula Zekavid, Haikula Zekavid. Each mazik, the shur, and independently the bar, did all of the damages. Okay, then we had a difficulty with that. The Kakashla, but then you had a difficulty, Lasham, High Palga, then why is the owner of the pit paying 3/4? Owner of the shur paying only 1/4. What do you mean? They all did all the damages. So then you should have to pay, as the shur tam, for all the damages, which is your half, which anyways you'd pay half, but that's the half that you chayv, so and then he should pay half. Why you pay only 1/4 and he pays 3/4? So and that says the Gemara, no, that mishum the amalei bala shur la bala bar, the owner of the ox could tell the owner of the pit, shoot for soy, my honestly, your partnership, what am I gaining? Without our partnership, I would anyways pay chatzi nezik. And since the owner of the pit also did all the damages, so therefore he's going to pay 3/4. So it's interesting svara that Rav Nosson the Dayan came up with, which is that if we're partners, where am I gaining from this partnership? Well, I didn't do all the damages. I did all the damage, but you also did all the damages. So where are you taking off some of my load that I have? So therefore, that's why my chiyuv of tashlumin, not just my hezek, my chiyuv of tashlumin, which is chatzin nezik, is going to be split with my partner, you balabar. So you're going to pay 3/4, and I'm going to pay 1/4. That's the Gemara's answer where this halacha of nothing came from. That's one approach. Or Ibaysim, if you want, you could say lo'im ksavar. The truth they held no, not kuli hezek of it, high pal hezek of it, high pal hezek of it. Each one only did half. Well, then we had a question the other way. The kakashlach, then you want to know balabar mishalim palga or balashar mishalim revia veidich riba nifsa. Then we had a difficulty. He says, wait a second. Then if it goes based on you're only doing half of the damage, that means say what you normally chayiv should only be cut in half. So then we said that the owner of the pit should only be chayiv half, because he only did half, and the owner of the shur should only be chayiv half of what he did, of what normally chatzin nezik should be now 1/4 nezik, but then 1/4 should be lost. Why is that 1/4 being put onto the balha bar if each one did only half the damage? So it says the Gemara, no, because the owner of the victim ox, not the mazik shar, the owner of the victim ox could tell the owner of the pit, Ana, me, I don't know. One thing I know, I found my ox dead in your pit. At ketalte, you killed it. Which Rashi says, when you killed it. It means I found it inside your property, in your pit. My deislish, what I can collect from this guy, the owner of the ox, I'll collect. My deleslish, what I cannot collect from him, because as a shur tam, and I'm only collecting half of that, I'm only getting 1/4. I'm going to collect from you. Now, Taisa explains, in the last Taisus, he says, but I don't understand. Since he only did half the damages, what type of svara is this? Because I found it in your pit, you're going to pay more than what the damage was. Why is he paying 3/4? So the Re wanted to explain that what it means to say is, high pagazeka ovid means in general. For example, when you have 2 oxen that are damaging, then it's each one did half. But over here, when the ox pushes another ox into a pit, the pit did the whole damage. Like I said, you killed my ox. I found my ox in your pit. And therefore, what I cannot collect from the shar, I'm going to collect from you. But Taisa means that the Re retracted from this perish. Because if that would be the case, then why, according to Rabbi Nosson, would a mud pay only half? Just like the shutfis of the shar helps for the bar, that the bar doesn't pay half of only half of what it damaged. So to the bar should help for the shar, and the shar should only pay half. And by a tam, you could also ask why you're paying only 1/4. So Taisa ends up saying really like what Rashi says, that no, a bar really only does half the damages too. It's just because the gemar of the hezek was in the bar, and it's as if it did all of it. And therefore we say, whatever can I collect from the owner of the shar, I'm going to collect from the owner of the bar. But what's important is this whole Gemara's discussion we said was according to Reb Nosson. We just had a steer with another brisa that's got us into the whole conversation, 3 different resolutions of what's the understanding of the brisa that says it's going to be 1/4 and 3/4, which we said that's one's by tam, one's by mud. But according to Rabbanan, Rashi, very important on the second white line, says that we go basami kara. We go based on the beginning, meaning who actually caused the damage. They hold the Baal Hashar will pay all the damages. So therefore, when it's a mud, the owner of the ox is going to pay the whole thing. When it's a tam, the owner of the ox is going to pay half, and half will be lost. And by the halacha of our Mishnah also, they don't hold like our Mishnah. Remember, our Mishnah is going like Reb Nosson. They hold you go based on the one who's digging. The guy who's digging is potter, because he caused the whole thing, and he's a grama. And the Balabar will be potter. Our Mishnah that says that Nafal Afon Mikol Akriya, you're going to be chayiv, is going like Reb Nosson. That holds what I can't collect from him, I'm going to collect from you, because Maisa, I found my dead animal in your pit. That's uniquely Reb Nosson. Now, related discussion, the Gemara brings Amar Rava. Rava says if you have a pit that's dug, and another person comes along, and Hanich Evan al Piabar, he puts a rock, a stone, on the edge of the pit. Now, Ubo Shur v'nitkalba. And an ox comes along, trips on that rock, and it falls into the pit. Says the Gemara, we have now entered the terrain of the machlekes Reb Nosson and Rabbanan, as Rashi explains. According to Rabbanan, the owner of the stone is going to be chayiv. Because remember, the Rabbanan held that the one who caused the whole fall is the one who gets all the liability. Now, says Rashi, why isn't this called grama bin nezikin? You should generally be potter when you're in a grama. And here you're a grama because it just caused you to fall into the pit. But the damage didn't actually happen with the rock. Says Rashi, no, because an Evan is a bar also. And it's hezek biyadayim. The rock is a mazik, it's in its own right, as a Brisa teaches in the third parak. No, but the Adam didn't do it. The Adam didn't do it. His rock did it.
But
That's grama.
He
didn't throw the rock.
The rock pushed him.
When you dig a pit, is that Adam hamazik or bar hamazik? When you dig a bar, is that Adam hamazik or that's bar hamazik? What?
Oh, he dug it.
So then every mazik is Adam.
You have to fill it up with dirt, otherwise you still high.
I understand, but when you dig a pit and now someone falls into your pit, we don't call that Adam hamazik, we call that bar hamazik. It's your mammon, it's shmiras nalecha, it's your ma'isa that caused it. But here the rock is its own mazik of bar, and therefore, according to Rabbanan, you're going to be chayiv for your rock, and the owner of the pit is going to be potter. According to Reb Nosson, no, they're both going to have to pay because, like Reb Nosson holds, that they're both parties for the mazik. So the Gemara says, "Pshita, it's so obvious. What's the chiddush of this halacha?" The Gemara, I'll tell you. Ma'adem, what would you say? Hasam, the previous case that we discussed, when the ox pushes another ox into the pit. Oh, maybe over there, who the amabalabar labalashar, the owner of the pit could tell the owner of the ox, look, ilav beiredidi, if not for my pit, your ox would have killed it. So we discussed, is it they're both doing all the damage or they're both doing half the damage? But be that as it may, we understand why the owner of the pit will not pay for the whole thing, because really the owner of the ox really should be liable also for the whole thing. Over here, maybe the owner of the rock could tell the owner of the pit, if not for your pit, what would my rock do without your pit? If he would trip on my rock and there was no pit, he would just fall down and get back up. And therefore, maybe you should be chayiv for everything. That's the chiddush to Amalei that no, the owner of the pit could tell the owner of the rock, no, you love Evan. If not for the stone, love another beer, wouldn't have fell into the pit. And if you are chayiv, and that's the chiddush that there would be a liability of the Bala Evan, again, according to Rabbanan, all of the liability, according to Reb Nosson, at least for half liability, but you would have thought that actually the Bala Bar should be chayiv for everything. Now, related to the theme of the Mishnah, Itmar, we learned as you get into the Beis, Shur, let's say you have an ox, and you have a Shur Psuli Hamagdashim. You have another ox that is a carbon that became invalidated, Shanagchu, that together between the two oxen, they gored another ox, which the Gemara in parentheses says, which a whole discussion regarding Gesois, my niyu, what is this Shar Psula Magdashin? It's a Shar Bachar Dulei Parikle. It's a firstborn ox that cannot be redeemed, which Rashi on the top, with if it's Rashi, it's not Rashi, from the Bal Halachas Gedailis, depends on the Gesois. But basically he says that if you have a firstborn animal that's blemished, it cannot be redeemed. That's the halacha, can never be removed from its kedusha. So therefore that's called like a shar hektish. And even though the kohen eats it, we don't call it shari ehu, because this that the kohen gets to eat it is really from like Hashem's table. Why are we talking about psulim mikdashim? Why don't we pick a case of a shar and shar hektish that gored another ox? Because they're telling you a chiddush that even a firstborn animal that's blemished, that animal is going to be potter because it wasn't redeemed. It's not shari ehu. But psulim mikdashim that were redeemed, you're going to be chayiv to pay if it gores, because that's called shari ehu. From the fact that we see later on the sugi that a shar hedyet that gores a shar psul mikdashin, when you have a carbon that was redeemed, you're going to be chayiv. It's called shari ehu. So we're specifically talking about that, for example, a bechar that cannot be redeemed, so therefore it's not shari ehu. So essentially, whatever it is that this ox cannot be collected from. The two oxen together gored an ox, but one of them you're not going to have to collect from because it's not shari ehu. The mazik of shar is only when it's shari ehu. So what's the halacha? Sabayami says mesham chazinesik. So he says that the owner of the regular ox is going to be chayiv for half the damages, and the rest will be lost from the victim, and that's talking about a regular shur tam, which is like Reb Nosson, that says that what you cannot collect from one, you collect from the other one. So it's like as if he doesn't have a partner, and he's going to have to pay all of the chatzinezik the way the halach is, as the Gemara is going to explain this in one moment. But you have to hold the bag as a partner in mazik, in the crime, when the other one cannot be collected from. Ravina, he says, no, Masham Ravina Nezik, he says you only pay a quarter of the damages. So the Gemara explains. They're both talking about a short tam, but they're not disagreeing, they're just going in different opinions. Ravina was going Kirabanan. Oh, the Rabbanan would hold you can be chayav only a quarter of the damages because you have a partner. This you cannot collect from Kachim is your own loss. But that's not a svara to be able to collect from the other one. But Abai was going Reb Nosson. And Reb Nosson held that what you cannot collect from one, you collect from the other one. Which Taisa points out, and the Chiddush is that even by two oxen, the halach is going to be the same thing like we said on Aman Alf, like we're shur in the bar. That even though in the shur in the bar, according to Reb Nosson, it really is more applicable to say when you cannot collect from the shur, you collect from the bar, because we said, you killed it, and by shur and shur you can't say such a thing. That's the Chiddush that we're saying, that no, according to Reb Nosson, you're still going to say what you cannot collect from one, you'll collect from the other one. And according to Rabban, the Chiddush is that don't say Davka by shur and bar, do we say this, that when you cannot collect from the bar, you cannot collect from the shur. That's because the bar did the Ikr Maisa and he killed him with the Hevel, and therefore you're not going to be able to impose that liability on the shur, even though you cannot collect from this. But by shur and shur, where it's not the Ikr Hezek by one more than the other, you would have thought that even according to Rabbanan, you cannot collect from one, you could collect from the other one. That's what we're saying that no, that even over there, that the equal, you cannot collect from one if you cannot collect from the other. That's one approach to say that Abaya and Ravina are not disagreeing; they're just going in different opinions of the Rabbanan, all like Reb Nosson. Or if you want, you could say Havahak Rabbanan, that actually both are going like the Rabbanan, and then they're still not disagreeing. How's that possible? Ha Ravina is Toma Batam. Remember, the Rabbanan hold that when you cannot collect, there's two partners. They both are chayiv, but one you can't collect from because it's hektish. So when the Rabban hold when you cannot collect from one, like we saw with the case in the shur and the bar, that doesn't mean you can collect from the other one. The shur the dema hezek, you cannot collect from the bar. So here, by a tam, which is chatzi nezek, which has two partners, which is quarter and a quarter, you're only going to collect a quarter because the quarter of hektish you're not going to put on to the other partner of the shur of hedyet. Abamud. Abayi was talking about a muad. A muad is nezek shalom, but one partner you cannot collect from. So great, you collect the chatzi nezek from one, and the rest will be lost. Or it could have another approach is you could say Abaya Amar Chatzi Nezek. Actually, this is another version of the discussion that actually talking about different opinions. You could have Amri that Abaya says Chatzi Nezek, Ravina Kuli Nezek. So the first version had it, Abaya said Chatzi Nezek, and Ravina said Ravina Nezek. Now it's still Abaya Chatzi Nezek, but now it's the other way around. Ravina is saying Kuli Nezek, you can have all the damages. So the Gemara explains Hava Haba Muad. They're both talking about Ashar Muad, and they're not disagreeing. It's the same theme as the first version, but the other way around. Ravina Amakuli Nazik, he says, they're both talking about Muad. Ha Abai is Krabanan, which, again, the Rabbanan hold that you only pay your half. So therefore you only pay Chatzi Nazik. Well, Krem Nasan. And Ravina was going, that says Nazik Shom, like Krem Nasan, which says that if you cannot collect from the other partner, we'll collect from you. Or you buy same way you want, you could say, oh, about Krem Nasan. They're both going like Krem Nasan. Which the first version had them both like Rabbanan. This version, obviously, because Ravina is Nazik Shom, they're both like Reb Nosson. Ha Ravina was Bemuad. And therefore, again, what you cannot collect from one, you collect from the other one. But Ha Abai says Chatzi Nazik is Batam. So therefore, you'll get the whole Chatzi Nazik from one of the partners. Now, a related discussion, the Gemara brings Omer Rava. It says, Shor v'Adam, an ox and a person, Shadachafai, that pushed something, Labar, into a pit. Comes out, there's three partners in this damage. The ox, the pit, and the human being. Which traces importantly, the Masechah Shor v'Adam says, not that the person pushed in deliberately with intent. Because if that would be the case, why would the owner of the pit be chayiv? You think that if a person puts his jacket of someone else in the fire of someone else, the owner of the fire is going to be chayiv? How could you have such a thing? So no, it's talking about where he didn't do it intentionally. Isis, Taisis, if it was Shlei B'Kavana, why would it be chayiv for Baishis, as we're going to shortly say? It's where the person knows when he's falling on his friend, he has that thought, just like we have the case in this hapach we have in Daf Chav. It doesn't mean you have to deliberately want it for that to happen. Akapanim, we're talking about that there's three parties over here that push, let's say, an ox or whatever it is, labar into a pit. So it really depends what the thing is. Lenin nizakin regarding damages, for example, let's say if they pushed a person into the pit and he got injured. So kulan chayavin, they're all going to be liable. They're going to split the damages between all three parties of the damage of the person. I says Rashi, We know the halacha is regarding bar that it says shor v'lo adam. So that we said many times that's only regarding the death. For example, if an eved falls and he dies. But nizaken, yeah, you are chayiv for a bar. And there's like Reb Nassan that says we don't go after just who caused it, who's the grama, because then only the shor and the adam would be chayiv. No, we're going like Reb Nassan that says the shor, the adam, and the bar are all going to be chayiv. That's regarding damages. Now, lina bar dvarim, regarding the liability of the 4 types of damages of tsar, ripur, shebes, and baishes, which that's besides for the damage, and for v'dmei vladis, which let's say that a pregnant woman was pushed and she miscarried, or adam, or a person that was pushed. So for all these things, chayiv, there's going to be a liability. The adam is going to be chayiv. Only the person is going to be chayiv, right? From the 3 parties, which the Gemara in Daf Chavav Merav told us that the liability of the Dalad Varim is only Ishba Misai, when the man's fighting with his friend, and not Sharba Misai. And also by Dmei Vladis it says Anashim, which tells it not Shvarim. So therefore, Adam is going to be chayiv, but Peshara Bar Pater. But the ox and the pit, they're going to be Pater. That's regarding the Dalad Varim and the Dmei Vladis. Now, the Inyan Kaifer, which is, let's say the person dies, or the 30 shkal when an eved dies in this pit, so shor chayiv, the ox will be liable like its halacha when the shor mud is chayiv for kaifer, and adam bar paturim, but the man and the pit will be pater. A man because he's actually liable to be killed for killing a person, and if you're getting killed, you're not chayiv monetarily. And even if they didn't warn him, he's going to be pater. From the Tan Bechizke and Perka Manich, we have enough lamahei that says since you could get killed, I mean you're not getting killed, you're pater in the monetary liability. And bar you pater for having killed a person because just shabli adam, which it's only if an ox falls in, but if a person falls in, you actually and dies, you actually pater. So therefore, the adam and the bar can be pater. Now regarding le'inin kalim, regarding vessels or garments, or shor psul magdashim, which let's say they push inside the pit an ox that was a carbon that became invalidated that was redeemed, which is called shari'eu after it's redeemed. Adam meshur chayavin. The man and the ox are going to be liable. Ubar pater, but the bar is going to be pater. Says he my time. Why is bar pater more than let's say shar? Because Amakar the pasuk says in Shemais, it says in the mazik of bar, it says that bala bar yishalem kesev yesh lebalav v'hameis yeloi, and the dead animal that fell into his pit is going to be to him, which teaches us b'misha meis shaloi. Only if the dead animal is actually his, that he could sell the dead animal. That excludes the case of Psul Mikdashin, She'ena Meis Shaloi, that the dead animal is not his, because even though it was redeemed, it has to be buried. As the Gemara tells us in Mesechta B'chayos in the 2nd parak, regarding Psul Mikdashin that were redeemed, the pasuk tells us Tizbach, it can be slaughtered, but you can't cut off its wool. When it says you could eat the meat, but you can't have its milk. When it says you could eat it b'chalta, but not for the dogs. From here we learned that you cannot redeem kachim to give it to feed to the dogs. So therefore it's excluding the case of Psul Mikdashin that there's no liability by the mazik bar. It's only if the misha meshalai. Says Gemara, remember the pshit le Rav. Is that really to say that to Rav was obvious this halacha that it was talking about excluding the halacha of shar psul mikdashim from bar? But Rav actually asked this as a question, that because the Rav asked shar psul mikdashim shnav lebar ma, he actually asked this halacha: an ox that was a carbon that became redeemed because it had a blemish that now someone owns, it fell into a pit. What's halacha? What was the question? Exactly this. When it says in the Torah by the mazik bar that the dead animal is his, does it mean that means only if you could use the dead animal? That excludes this case that you cannot use the dead animal, you have to bury it, and if you're not going to be chayv for the mazik bar, I don't know. Maybe means the dead animal is going to be his. Means it means that the owner, he has to be busy with the dead animal, as the Gemara said in the first parak of Yom Beis. V'amesi means to say that the victim, he has to, v'amesi meaning the victim, you get the dead animal. So let's say your living animal is worth 1,000, now it's worth 100. You take the 100, I'll only supplement 900. Maybe that's what it's coming to say. So you see, he had a question. How could you say that this was why it's excluding? So the Gemara, after he asked it, he resolved it. And he says, yeah, that's coming to exclude Psula Magdashim. So the Gemara says, wait, how do you know by the bar that the victim has to be busy schlepping out the dead animal and he has to take it as payment? But I thought Vamesi Eloi is coming to teach you to exclude when you can't use the dead animal, which is excluding Psula Magdashim, and not to say Vamesi Eloi that the victim has to take it. Says Gemara, you're right. Nafkele min v'amesi Eloi d'shar. The same words v'amesi Eloi is said by the mazik of shar. There, it means to say that the victim has to take it. So we know that the victim always has to take it by bar too. So the Gemara says, wait a second. It says v'amesi Eloi both by shar and by bar. My chaz is v'amesi Eloi d'shar. What did you see fit to say? When it says the dead animal is going to be his by shar. Oh, so only over there, mafkis l'labam atap l'vela. There you're going to give a whole drasha, and you say, it's telling me that the victim, that he has to take the dead animal. So obviously, as Rashi explained, by default, that means to say that you're going to say, but by psul mikdashin, if a shar injures another shar that's psul mikdashin, you're going to be chayiv, because there's no exclusion of lamisha meshaloi. It's being used to tell you that the victim has to take it. And suddenly, the same words. Then you say, no. It means to say that only if the dead animal is yours. And that's excluding that the bar is not chayiv for some mikdashin. Maybe say the exact opposite. Maybe say that there's going to be chiv of some mikdashin by bar, and maybe you put by shar. Like, it's so arbitrary. How do you see fit to say by one you'll be chayiv of some mikdashin, one you'll be potter, depending how you're interpreting Mamesi Eloi, only by bar and not by shar? Says the Gemara, it's logical. It's logical to say that the one case that's going to be exempt of Psul Mikdashin is by bar. Why? Because we find bar has other exemptions. When vessels and garments fall in your pot, this would make sense that Psul Mikdashin also. To the contrary, it makes more sense to be potter by shar because you came potter by chatzin nezek. You find that, which you don't find anywhere else, the mazik of shar at times can pay half the damages. So therefore, maybe it should be the one that's potter on Psul Mikdashin. So the Gemara, but kuli nezek mislashkan. You never find to be totally exempt on the damage. You find half, not whole. The only one you find totally exempt is by bar. And if it's more mistapach to say that the exemption of Amesi Eloi of Psul Mikdashin is going to be by bar and not by that of shar. Now the Gemara. Okay, we'll see. I think it's any time. We'll finish over there.